that language based on the sentence, composed of subject, verb, and predicate, contains the hidden belief system that events are started by nouns, by things. And so it's very important to understand that in the real universe, there are no things at all. And this startles people, because we think of the universe as the sum total of things. But when you go into the question, what you mean by a thing, you ask children this question, what do you mean by a thing? And they'll say, well, an object. Well, I said, you've just substituted another word that doesn't tell me anything. Well, they can come back if they're very smart and say, what do you mean by anything? I got once in a class of high school kids an Italian girl who said a thing is a noun. Well, she was getting warm. A thing is a think. It's almost the same word. It's a unit of thought in the same way that an inch is a unit of linear measure, or a pound a unit of weight. And so in various languages this comes out. In German you've got ding, thing, denken, to think. In Latin, res, thing, reor, to think. So when we reify, that means to thingify. But it's easy to understand this, although it's a little bit of a shock to our common sense. So that the world is not unlike a Rorschach blot. And in psychological testing, we get people to describe Rorschach blots and say what they see in them. Now, you can perfectly well imagine that we in this room could have an enormous Rorschach blot on the wall. And we would all discuss it and arrive at a consensus about what it was. And we would manage, in other words, to coagulate our different points of view. And if there were a very dominant person present, he or she would tend to force the particular view upon everybody else and say, no, obviously it isn't what you say it is. Look, it's perfectly clear that it's that. So we are living in a Rorschach blot. Only urban people have difficulty in realizing this. Because they think in very simplistic terms. See, Euclid had a very simple mind. And therefore he discussed a geometry which wasn't a measure of the earth at all. The word geometry is from the Greek geos, the world, the earth, gis, and metra, which means to measure. Now the Greek word for measure, from which we get metric, meter, comes from the Sanskrit root, M-A-T-R, which also means to measure, and derived from that is the Sanskrit word maya. And meter also is the Greek word for mother, and is, of course, the root of the word matter. And in Sanskrit, there is no word for matter. The word rupa, which is used for the material or physical world, means form. And so you get Namarupa as the full name for what we call physical reality. Nama means name, Rupa form, so it is named form. And so Lao Tzu, writing the Tao Te Ching, says, the nameless, or the no name, is the basis of heaven and earth. But the named is the mother of 10,000 things. So, in the sense then of this, you can understand the saying, in the beginning was the Word. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. Because you don't get things until you start naming. Because then you point out on the universal Rorschach blot, this wiggle, what do you mean, this wiggle? Where does one wiggle begin and the other end? Well, this is a matter of arbitrary definition. Where does your head end and your neck begin? Here, 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 here. Well, where is it? We know vaguely. But you can't be precise about it, because you can look at the head and the neck as continuous. That by description and by conventional decisions as to where to draw the line, we can communicate in language. And this is socially valuable. But we must not be deluded by what we're doing. Because if we do truly believe that the world is a lot of separate things, we believe that we can take them apart and have this without that. So what we've got is a universe that all hangs together, and where each so-called part of it implies all the other parts. Let's take what we call holography. This is a method of visual reproduction that employs laser beams. Now, you can cut a small piece out of a photographic negative, just a tiny little square. And by holographic method, you can reconstruct from that little piece the rest of the negative. It will be pretty clear in the middle place where you've taken out the tiny square, and then vaguer towards the edges. But it's all implied in that little square. Now, of course, a photographic negative is a crystal. It's a structure of crystals. And the way the crystals are formed in that tiny piece depends on its original environment on the whole negative. See that? You, the way you are, depends on or goes with your cultural, social, and biophysical environment. So there is really and truly no way of separating out independent things. And this is difficult for people to understand because of our method of motion. A plant is understandable as something growing out of the earth because it's rooted. But human beings wander about on legs. We don't seem so stuck to things as plants do. And therefore we have delusions of separation.